are back for a very, very exciting topic today. I'm so excited to talk about this topic because we're talking about how we discover new music now. Because this is something that I think it's very generational, and I'm like at this new sort of age where a lot of how you get music versus how I used to get music is so totally different, right? So like, just first to start off, I have a CD collection of 2000 CDs that is sitting in storage in California right now. And it was like, thinking about this, I was like, oh my God, my 2000 CDs, what am I going to do with that 2000 CDs that's been sitting in storage for the last 9 years? But I just remember, like, when I was in my apartment, when we were still living in California, my shelf is full of CDs. Like, that was, and I remember just growing up in that era of buying CDs, and that was an event, when an album came out and I wanted to go buy it. And I mean, did you guys ever bought CDs? I guess that's the first question.
Yeah. When I was younger and first started learning like violin and stuff, my parents they don't know anything about classical music, but they would just buy me a bunch of like violin related CDs, or like cello, like Yo-Yo Ma, or like Itzhak Perlman, and just get the CDs for me. And then when I got older, I specifically got like K-pop CDs, but that's about it. Yeah.
Okay. And was it because it wasn't readily available to listen to online, or were you just like so into it that you wanted to buy a CD?
I think when I was younger, so this is like 15 years ago.
Right.
I don't know about other people, but a lot of the time we still listen to music like on the CD player at home, with the big speakers, rather than just streaming it online.
Yeah.
But of course it's different nowadays.
Did you guys ever bought CDs?
I think like the memories of listening to CD only like exist when I was probably like elementary school, because I used to, that we went to like I remember that we used to went to like those audio shop, or usually like the bookstore. They also have a corner of all the CDs, and then they have like headphones on the corner that you can like put on the latest CD and you can like listen to it before you actually buy it. And then after that, it just like the corner just kind of disappeared when I grew up. And then like, so like that exists like a elementary school memories. I did my first CD is my dad brought it from Hong Kong. It's like a Lady Gaga or like Lady Gaga CD or Lana Del Rey. Like that's my first CD, and after that, like I was in my K-pop era for a little bit. But that's like pretty much like a different culture, because when you bought like a K-pop CD, it comes with like all the little stickers and stuff.
Yeah, because it's like not just a CD, right? Like
it's a
album from Asia is almost like a marketing package. It's like a gift that you're getting, which makes it a big deal, because it's
very much like
other accessories.
Yeah, it's like a fan culture of buying CD. I think that's very different from what my parents, because my dad also collect records and vinyls. We probably have, I lost count. He also collected like CDs and tapes. Like I lost count on how many vinyls that we have, but like he is a huge fan of listening to records and vinyls. Yeah.
Pre-CD, I also actually had cassettes. Yeah. Nick, are you gonna tell me you're too cool for CDs, that you never bought CDs?
I mean, I listened to it past past elementary school. I remember I mean, my mom has a really extensive CD collection. So we used to have to take like long car rides in different places. So I used to pick off different CDs and listen to them in the car. I mean, like, hell, like, even my car right now has a CD player. So maybe that's something to look into. But, I mean, we even have a cassette collection. I realized that I have a cassette player actually in my house too, and I think I could go even further back. In Poland, we found that we have one of those God, I don't even know what they're called. Like with the tapes around them. I forgot what you'd call that. Like the
8-tracks?
I think so. I think that's what it would be called. Like meaning like with the spools of tape that you have to float around it to. Yeah, so we have some of those.
Wow.
But what do I remember from CDs? Well, I remember listening to like the 24 Chopin Etudes by like Polini. I remember listening to like Sesame Street songs. It was like a mixed bag. It was, but I mean, you know, then it all changed when I was like what 7 or 8 years old and I got an iPod. So that's when things started taking a little bit of a turn. Oh yeah.
Oh, this is a conversation that really, really, really exposes my age, but it's okay. No, I mean, I remember when I started having, so I would buy blank cassette tapes, which were of course cheaper, and then I would go to the library to borrow the cassette and then come and record it. So I would have a collection of like recorded cassette tapes. I can't even remember the technology of how I did it, but I did that. And that's how I would I would start collecting. That's how I would listen to music, right? Aside from, of course, the good old, like timeless technology of radio. But aside from listening to the radio, that was sort of like I would go to the library to take out cassette tapes because you could borrow cassette tapes from the library. And then, of course, moving beyond cassette tapes, you can also, borrow CDs. Then I was able to, I was able to save up some money, and then I would start then to buy cassette tapes. And it was one of those cultures, it was like between elementary school and middle school where that transition of cassette and CD came into play. And then CD came into play, and then I was saving money just to like buy a CD of like the album or the artist that I really, really wanted to listen to. And it, like I said, it was just going to the CD shop. Like we had Tower Records, like Tower Records existed. You probably guys heard of Tower Records. No.
That's in Greenwich Village, right? That used to be in Greenwich Village.
But then it was also Tower Records around Times Square. So Tower Records was one of the biggest record shops in America. And of course, like Barnes and Nobles, they were a big chain, and then they slowly dwindled and everything shut down. They still have a Tower Records though in Japan. And of course, when Tower Records started shutting down, then of course there's some of the like really specialized mom and pop shops still existed in the village where you would get special collections, and of course vinyl. I never was in that era of vinyl, but because of my background in working in the industry, I worked with a boss who loved listening to vinyl because he used to be a DJ. And so in his office, he had a record player, he had one of those, and he would just listen to everything on vinyl, and it was like the encyclopedia of every single record out there. And it was a big deal, like when even from cassette, then moving on to CDs. I just remember it was like a huge event, like trying to, like unpacking when you have videos, like YouTube videos now of like unpacking stuff. It was like unpacking a CD, like opening it up. And it was, listening to the liner notes, like reading the books and the liner notes and all the credits and all the lyrics and so on and so forth. And I took so good care of my CDs that my friends would call me crazy because I would go get empty cases if like the case is cracked, and then we would trade, like people would borrow my CDs to listen and I'll borrow their CDs to listen. It was just like, it created such a huge community. And I just feel like because you're listening to those CDs and those songs over and over and over again, you really got to learn in depth about the artist's career, right? And it's just not like a very specific moment of their lifetime, like you followed, like I made specific to follow and buy every single album for like, certain handful of artists. And that's interesting to just tap into, like listening to artists in a different way when there's no album or no anymore. Like hardly any artist, unless your big recording label, is recording full albums. And even classical musicians, like not many young musicians are recording full albums or full, you know, CDs, just because it's a very, very expensive to produce. And unless you're a big celebrity, you know, like a Long Long or a Yuja or a Yo-Yo, you know, no record company is going to put money behind a product that is not really going to sell either, right? So I think it's just not how we digest or how do we discover new music, but it also impacts how artists makes a career for themselves, right? Whether it's classical or not. And my cat is trying to get into the shad. No, sit right there, sit. Sorry about that. But yeah, it was a big deal. You paid attention. I think that's the difference, right? Streaming songs now, listening to it on Spotify, you're not really paying attention, to be honest. But when you put in a CD in that CD player, you're really paying attention to every single song you're listening to. And that created this kind of like, you know, at the drop of the first 2 beats, I can know what song and which artist. Like, I can't even do that now anymore. And it creates this kind of like, is it the artist that you're after or is it the song that you're after? Whereas before it was like, okay, there's this really like following of a fan, but of course the song is there too, but it almost like it got tied together. Now it's like the song is, you know, I know the song, but I have no idea who the artist's name is. Until you're like, oh, or like if you were to tell me this artist is so and so, and I was like, who the hell is this artist? And then once you play the song, you're like, oh, so that's the person.
Well, that's because there's so many. I mean, there's so many different artists and so many songs happening at the same time. You know, I feel like it's hard to follow. Like, I mean, I frequently listen to like, I listen to the radio when I drive. If I'm not listening, you know, if I'm not plugging in my phone, just to kind of hear new music, depending what kind of genre I want to get into, right? So, I mean, that's how I find out about all these songs. And you have like, you know, 15 different songs in like an hour, and then all those songs are by different artists, you know. You have more options, is what I'm saying these days with the internet, right? So you're not so locked in because, I mean, you buy, like you said, you were saving money to buy CDs, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, now you know, look up any artist really on YouTube and watch or listen to their music for free. So it's a little bit of a different situation, I suppose. If you want to listen to music, you're not really limited to those options, and I guess it takes away the intimacy that you had with the music before.
Yeah, like nowadays you can listen to every single piece of music in the whole world right now, but in the past, like that's all we had. Like I remember when I got my first iPod Touch that I begged my parents for, and then everyone had to like buy songs individually off of iTunes back then, right? And obviously I didn't want to do that, nor was I like allowed to do that. So I would get CDs from the library and then illegally, I guess, put them all into my iPod. So I got very, very acquainted with like a few very specific albums. Like there's like the one very specific like Britney Spears, like the Circus one, and then one very specific Beyonce album, and a very specific who else was there? Like Taylor Swift and like Selena Gomez.
That Britney outlier.
Yeah. You know, and I I don't know, because you guys you're obviously not, you didn't have really CDs past, you know, now people, you know, like, so I guess for me it's also like this kind of option, which is great. I mean, you can easily at your fingertip really find anything that you want, right? But at the same time, I also don't have any real knowledge of any artist either. I get very paralyzed now by all the choices, because in a way there's too much choices. Just like you go down the supermarket and then all these options of like, I just want a carton of egg. I don't need to have like an entire aisle of choices between free range and non-free range, cage-free, whatever you wanted to call it. It's just egg. I don't need to stand there for 5 minutes deciding what kind of egg I want, right? Because now it's like information overload and you can't decide what you wanted to listen to. And I don't know if you guys get into that, if you feel that way, or is it just like, you know what, come at me. I'm open to all of these kinds of different sounds or this kind of discovery.
I think like one of the thing that happens right now, because music is like so accessible to us, is like there are a lot of like one hit wonder that they only have like one song that's like a huge bop and then they just disappeared. Like you listen to their song once and then like probably like a couple months later you look at, or like a couple years later you look back at them, you're trying to like find out what they have after that song, and then you just find out they don't, that's the only song they have. Just because I feel like music nowadays, like the randomly it just came across your feed, like it's on TikTok or Instagram, and then you listen to it and it's a bop, and then like people don't follow up. There's no like completeness of a artist, like their artistic side, like it kind of just like got shown for like 1 moment and it just disappeared.
Yeah, and that's also because of this ease and accessibility and the ease of putting your materials out there. You have actually also a lot of crap that's really out there, right? And then actually the more options there are, the less originality there are. Like I'm listening to, just listening to across the radio now, and everything is a remake of old songs, right? All of these songs are not original anymore. They're like, oh, I'm gonna take one of these old tracks and then just remix it and make it my own now.
Like Miley Cyrus, for example, like with her song, what was it, Flowers? I mean, I don't really listen, but wasn't that, what's his name? Bruno Mars. That was totally ripped off of a Bruno Mars song, and just the words were changed and a bridge was added.
Yeah.
Do you guys know Jojo Siwa? Did you guys hear her song Karma, which has been like everywhere?
Yeah, and like that's an old song. Or what's
exactly.
doing Dangerous Paradise. Like that is, I'm like, these are all by the OGs, like, and then you're not, so what is so interesting about that? Right? Like those are what we call like radio edits, that we make different versions of it to play on radios for different channels. Like we have the dance mix and then the club mix that we do, when we put out an album. And so this is what I'm saying. It's like, because of these options, I just also don't feel like there's a lot of original music anymore, because everyone is just trying to grab everyone's attention at the quickest speed, and they don't think about the longevity of it. And maybe they don't care, maybe artists just don't feel like maybe they just think that it's okay for me to be a one-hit wonder. I don't know, right? And so for me, it's just like the idea of trying to find a good record, like for me, is just almost like so hard. That's how I feel. I don't know about you guys. I mean, like, what are your thoughts when you just plug in your earphones and what are you listening to? Are you just think of it as like a background music, or are you actively really listening to the songs? Like when I put a CD in, I am actively paying attention. I may be doing something, but I am actively listening to a song, and I would go and back like the rewind button, and I'll go back and listen to songs again, because I want to learn the lyrics, or I would go back and some of them have that comes with lyrics, and I'll follow the lyrics and I would know the songs inside out. Right now, I'm just like, there's none of that unless you go onto YouTube and you search for it. But in a way, it's almost like I'm not really paying attention to the songs anymore. It's almost like I don't care. It's just almost like serves as a background music. It also impacts the audio world, because I worked in the A&R department. So we're in charge, my boss is in charge of finding and signing artists, right? Like he needed specific specs for speakers. And like his speaker system and whatever that required was like, even me as the assistant outside had a better like, setup than I did at home, which is just a dinky little like, CD player with 2 speakers that I got as my birthday. But it was just, it's those that, or like my cousin was an audiophile. Like he needed the best equipment. He wanted to have the best sound room so he can sit there and enjoy and listen to music. That was like a thing, right? Like back in the day, where it was a thing for a lot of people to have the most high-end audio system in the house, because you want the best audio output. Or in your office, like that was one thing I always wanted to just have, at least decent like speakers, because speaker was the thing, right? Whatever you play out of doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's all about the speakers. Now people don't really seem to care, right? Like I'm just listening to music as long as I can hear. That's all that matters. So
I feel that way.
I
I feel
think
that
there's
way.
that appreciation of also respecting the music, right? Like respecting the artists and appreciating what they do, and fully enjoying that process of discovering new music. Now it's like, you know what? If I don't really like the first 30 seconds, I'm just gonna skip.